We have officially entered that time of year where the flowers are blooming, and I feel as if someone is pouring a thimble of acid up into my nose where it just gets into my sinus cavities and just burns and drips and just melts out the space between my eyeballs. Oh, it's awful. Oh, it's just bloody awful. Anyway, I wasn't quite sure it was a good idea to go ahead and hit the go live button, but I was like, you know what? This video is going to have to be recorded anyway, so let's just get down to it. Today's shirt, again, I've lost track of which shirts I've worn and which ones I haven't. I need to buy more. Today is Parks and Recreation. This is Leslie Knope. Here we have, I think I have shown you guys this shirt before, the Gay Penguins. Her binders. I just felt like I needed Leslie Knope's energy today. I'm trying to think if there's any big ones. Oh, I need to wear Rick and Morty. You guys need to see Rick and Morty. That's a really good one. I like the color of that one too. Okay, so I'm not too ambitious with today's video. You guys are supposed to be kind of looking around and looking at trends in news, because we're starting very informally thinking about things we want to learn about in our surroundings, right? Now, I've done a little bit of this with my face-to-face classes, but with the online classes, it can be a little bit tougher to sort of like organize and direct this, because this is something that really lends itself well to conversation. And part of me thinks it might be a good idea to schedule like an extra team session one day, just so that we can have a conversation about what we're looking at. And again, we're starting off very, very informal with just looking at media, right? So we're going online, we're looking at news organizations, we're thinking about where we get information about the things that we're looking for. There's a lot of complexity and nuance in this conversation, because a lot of it really kind of depends on what you want to write about. So for this conversation today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what my students in the face-to-face, I don't know what pill I need, but I need another pill. What kind of subjects the face-to-face students are talking about and where they're getting their info. So as we consume news and as we start writing about and thinking about where what we're seeing, the conversation can shift. Just instead of just talking about the headlines that we're seeing day to day, we can start talking about trends. Now, trends are patterns that you see in events, right? Patterns that you see, it could be patterns in coverage. It could be patterns in rhetoric and argumentation, what people are trying to say is important about events coming out. So once we start seeing trends in the news, we could start moving a little bit more towards what I would say is something more akin to argumentation. So some of the trends that I have seen and some of the trends that the students in the other classes have seen, let's talk about these for a minute. One of the things that I found, this is me personally, just watching TV over the weekend. It's hard for me to believe, how many weeks has it been since the war in Ukraine has been raging? It's been a few weeks, right? Before the war in Russia and Ukraine, we did have a gradually increasing issue with gas prices, and I've had several students wanting to write about gas prices too. But something interesting has popped up on my radar a little bit over the last couple of weeks. As we were watching TV, I bet I saw 5 different commercials for fully electric vehicles. I saw a couple just full electric cars, and a fully electric pickup truck that could go 400 miles before needing a recharge. For an electric vehicle, that's actually pretty impressive. And the idea that there would even be an electric pickup truck is kind of a eyebrow raiser in and of itself. Now, just for the sake of debate, because interesting, does the timeline match here? Maybe not just with the invasion of Ukraine, but the gradually increasing gas prices that we've been seeing ever since the election, and even kind of projecting back This has been a pattern that's been going on with COVID as supply lines have been disrupted. Inflation is rising, gas prices are rising, and it seems that car manufacturers are starting to catch on to this. Are you interested in an electric vehicle? I never have been, and I've certainly never been able to fork up the cash for something like that. But the main things that's discouraged me from the idea of an electric vehicle has been the infrastructure behind it. There's not a lot of places to charge an electric vehicle around here. There is one at Walmart, but you just don't see very many locations that you can use to charge your vehicle. You have to really carefully think about what your car is able to do before you plan a trip. So, but it seems to me that there's a bit of a sea change coming in car manufacturing and in marketing. There were just a ton of those ads. Now, that's a commercial, right? I've been asking you to go and look at media and to get an idea of what's going on in the discussion with media. But those commercials are a form of media. Seeing commercials, looking at who those commercials are marketed to, is something that's potentially worthy of discussion here. So, that's one of the things that I like about doing a little bit more loose research projects is just because something is not in and of itself like a media article that's arguing something doesn't necessarily mean we can't use it in a project. If I wanted to write something about the coming advent of the electric vehicle, and remember, there's plenty of you out here right now, they're like, nah, electric vehicle's never going to go anywhere. You're not wrong. There's certainly an argument to be made that we'll never see an inundation of electric vehicles coming based upon, how feasible they are currently. So they definitely are pushing for it. So that is a trend that I have kind of identified that I'm going to be looking at closely over the next coming years. So from there, I wanted to talk about a few more trends, how I identify them and how some of my students have talked about them with face-to-face discussions. I am very popular this morning. I'm getting all these emails, and I am not going to stop this video because I don't want to do all this again. I'm way too tired for that. I want a hot dog. You ever just all of a sudden just have like a overwhelm? Apparently, when it comes to cravings, if you're hungry, why the hell am I talking about this? Hunger is biological, right? So if you're just hungry, you should be able to eat a lot of different things without having much preference. A craving for something specific, in my case right now, a hot dog, is emotional. You're looking for some type of satisfaction and comfort from the food. So if you have a craving for something, you're actually wrestling with some type of emotional need, unless you're very, very nutritionally deficient or pregnant. In that case, your body's actually looking for some type of sustenance that it's like very specific. But yeah, my craving of a hot dog says that I'm sad. I am sad. I'm always sad. Anyway, what the hell was I talking about? Here's a big one. What the hell happened to COVID? Right? I know you see a lot of coverage still of COVID, especially kind of the continued wrangling for COVID restrictions, masking, all that stuff, vaccine mandates. But as far as here in the South and here in Georgia, COVID has kind of fizzled. The Omicron variant, not being as strong as it was, I personally think may have bumped up a lot of immunity because I think a ton of people had it and didn't know. And that in having it, increases your immunity. So I think for the time being, unless there's another major mutation of COVID, I don't think it's completely outside the realm of possibility that this could be a major lull in our public health issues. We might be actually turning the corner right now. That's a trend that you may be able to identify. One of the big problems with Canada right now is that they still have a great deal of those COVID restrictions in place. And the lifting those has been very slow. There's a lot of fear up there. They're very afraid of lifting it too fast. We in the US, if you guys want to disagree with me, write about it and you'll get a ton of points. We in the US kind of started lifting things a lot faster than other countries did. I personally think we may have done it a little too fast. We might have been able to reduce the casualty rate if we'd been a little more careful. But that's neither here nor there. Countries have to decide how they're going to handle things in different ways. You make the choice between your public's health and the economic health, which that's a perfectly legitimate argument to have. So in any case, as a trend, I think COVID seems to be going more the way of, it's fading from a little bit of our public consciousness. Unless something absolutely major happens, I think that's going to continue. So that's a trend that I think I've identified. What else have I looking at? I'm sorry. I got to do it. This is a personal one too. And I'll come back to the big one in a minute, but it is WrestleMania season. And there has been so much buzz about wrestling in my circles, a whole bunch of stuff about who's going where. And basically with WrestleMania, there's always a fever pitch of wrestling discussion that pops up around WrestleMania week. And it really is a week. The stuff that's, all the events that's coming up around that, I think, gosh, is it April 4th? I thought about throwing a party this year, but I just don't know if I have the mental fortitude for that. The week of WrestleMania sees a resurgence of wrestling as a conversation in a lot more open pop culture stuff. So you're far more likely to hear mentions of The Rock, of John Cena, simply because, it's kind of just sort of in the air. Now, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's a lot of gaming stuff going on. Elden Ring is sucking all of the oxygen out of the room right now. One thing I've been really surprised about for my gamers out there, I've been talking a lot about Game Pass, and the recent releases from Game Pass, kind of underwhelming. I just haven't seen anything that's really piqued my curiosity. And it just kind of feels like they just haven't had any major world-bending titles coming out in Game Pass. I feel like they need to step that up a little bit. And for March, I've been extremely disappointed. Nothing has really stood out to me. I could be wrong, but yeah, that's been fizzling for me a bit lately. I still think if Nintendo ever expands their library on the Nintendo Switch Plus subscriptions, they'd be able to go toe-to-toe with Xbox. And I've been waiting for more of that to happen, especially since they closed the Virtual Console store on Wii U and DS. So I've been expecting a major movement from there to take advantage of all this classic retro gaming that they have. But again, I haven't seen anything from that direction either. So all my predictions on, multiple fronts have just kind of been right. Now, we'll talk about this last one, and then I'm going to give you guys kind of the big hint about where this research project is going, because we're going to do these information reports for 2 more weeks. As you're just kind of following your subjects, I'll keep expanding on what I see with mine to give you guys some hints and, kind of sort of feed your imagination a little bit. One of the things I'm going to do when the information report I asked for, which is just literally, have I talked about the information report? David, here's what I want to do with the information reports. I'm going to give you a grade for 3 information reports. Unlike everything else we've submitted in this class, I don't want you to put these in the Dropbox. And I'm thinking maybe later today, I'm going to write up a rubric for this. I don't want you to put these in the Dropbox. What I want you to do instead is I want you to write out 1 page of notes every week and tell me what it is you're seeing, right? The headlines for your subject. Now, for right now, you can very much go to Google and search up stuff, right? We'll introduce more complexity for this as we move on. You can go to CNN, you can go to Fox News, you go to MSNBC. You can search up, and if you want, you can get really nuanced with this. You can set up alerts using Google, but mainly I kind of just want you looking and seeing what's going on with your subject, right? So every week on Thursday, I want you to go into the research forum, and I want you to post about the equivalent of a page of notes, just following what's going on in the subject that you've chosen. I'll give you participation points for this, and I'll also give you a grade for, gosh, I think, what is it, essay 4 or essay 3? I'm losing track of everything at this point. Oh, yeah, we did the how-to. So far, we've done the We did the, what was the first one? Dang nabbit, Dave. Jump the Shark, Eco Narrative, How To. This will be for Essay 4, okay? I'm going to be very easy on this because this is just the equivalent of notes. We're building up a database of articles and news stories to help us get a better idea of what it is we want to write about for the final research paper. So this is, I'm not going to say free points, but this is a pretty easy assignment as long as you keep up with notes. And they can be very rough. These can be bullet lists. These could be bullet points. These can be numbered. It can be a rough outline just of the stuff you've seen that week. It is a bit time sensitive. If you do this late, it's not going to be very valuable to you. I'm not going to give you a lot of credit for it. So as long as you are hammering out these notes as you're watching your news, you'll be fine, right? It's very, very easy, very low impact. Now, the big story, I've got multiple students writing about this one, is Ukraine, obviously, right? Everybody's really paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine right now. It's, again, one of my favorite phrases right now is sucking the oxygen out of the room. Now, what's been fascinating about this is just how much of a disaster it's been for Russia militarily. Now, it being a disaster for Russia militarily doesn't mean they're going to lose. But I think their standing on the world stage has drastically suffered. The fact that Russia, which has always been perceived to be a massive superpower, their military was always something to be greatly feared, has gotten bogged down in all places, Ukraine. I think the overall effect of this is going to be that the countries that have been traditionally extremely afraid of Ukraine, afraid of Russia, aren't going to be as afraid. And in fact, Russia did this partially because, and keep in mind, like one of the things that's happening right now is there's a lot of muddiness regarding Russia's intentions. Russia's intentions going in there have kind of sort of exploded. There's this really weird kind of justification about Nazis in Ukraine, which, I mean, there is obviously all places that are experiencing a degree of geopolitical turmoil are going to have like far right wing political influence, right? That's to be a bit expected. But I think everybody knows that their original intentions for going into Ukraine was to fight the expansion of NATO. That's what they were really, really worried about, right? NATO, the alliance that has traditionally been very anti-Russian, is on their doorstep, and they were afraid Ukraine was going to join NATO and the EU, which, to be fair, from a geopolitical standpoint, actually kind of makes sense that Russia would be uncomfortable with that, right? I don't think it justifies an invasion, but it is a bit of an explanation as to why they're doing what they are doing. This has achieved the exact opposite. I think Finland, gosh, I can't remember the others. There's like 2 or 3 countries that were that were, hesitant to join NATO because they thought they would escalate the conflict. They're now very quickly trying to join NATO. And in fact, Ukraine is trying to join the EU even as they are fighting Russia in their own border. A lot of people are worried about some type of World War III scenario. I'm not necessarily too concerned about that. I'm more worried in another Cold War scenario where there's a great deal of economic military tension. I think that's far more likely. And one of my favorite things about this, and we'll talk about this a little bit more next time, we are going to make an argument in this research paper. We are going to put forth some type of opinion. And this is something that bothers a lot of students, especially when I had a nice long conversation with a student the other day that was like, but what if my opinion's wrong? And I was like, then you have an opinion, right? In order to have an argument, in order to have an opinion, you must have the capacity of being wrong, right? That's part of it. That's what this is. If your opinion is 100% verifiable, you haven't expressed an opinion, you've expressed a fact, right? So what we're building ourselves up to is to express some type of an opinion on the subject that you've chosen. And it can be very scary to do so, especially since you guys have probably only been researching it so far, what, a week? And you've been doing it in a very informal basis. It's not like you've been going and watching and reading everything. I'm more of like an obsessive reader of news. So when I talk about stuff, I'm able to come off pretty educated. All right. I can talk about Russia like I know a lot of stuff about Russia. And I guess I kind of do. I mean, I've read a lot of books about it because I'm interested in Russia, but I'm no foreign policy expert. That's something that, I do a lot better job of pretending this stuff than I do, actually being, a solid expert. So what I'm going to do is the easiest way that I find to offer up an argument with this assignment is to offer up a prediction. Predictions are a very nice, easy way to get into the kind of argumentative field without necessarily going in and putting yourself like totally out there to be vulnerable, because predictions by their very nature are flimsy. So I'm going to make a prediction right now. I'm more worried about a Cold War style scenario. And I think what Russia has shown us is they will not be the massive leadership figure in this new kind of Cold War world we'll live in. They can't. They've been humiliated. Their military is not doing what it needs to do, and they are not doing what they say they will do. Their intelligence has not worked very well, and it has just folded in upon itself. So now Russia is turning to its allies in order to try to shore up their economy. I think the big major adversary, and when I say adversary, keep in mind, I don't mean to say that they're wrong. It's just like their place in the political world, right? But I think the next big adversary for NATO is going to be China. China is in a much, much better place to offer a counter argument for the things the European Union, the United States, and NATO are doing. And again, keep in mind, I'm not villainizing them, but the world often breaks down into kind of like this weird binary where it's one team versus team one versus team two, Axis versus allies, communists versus capitalists. And I think a new iteration of this will be somehow shaped by China. And it'll be a very interesting thing to see. And I could be wrong. Russia could end up being this kind of foil to the NATO European Union alliance that forms this other side of the world. The world is a very complicated place. But I think the main thing that they've showed us is that Russia is not the powerhouse they thought they were. And the world is actually having to adjust to this new reality. So in any case, I've modeled a little bit of the type of thinking I want you guys to try on. Keep following your news. Keep following your trends. Thursday, I really want you to share in the discussion forum what you are seeing, what you think is important. Try to shoot for about a page, 3 paragraphs. All right. That's a lot, but keep in mind, I'm not necessarily going after this in a grammatical sense. I'm not going to be, picking it apart very much. This is notes. You are preparing a much larger paper. If you guys have any questions, obviously we'll have our stream on our live stream on Wednesday. I know this will be a little uncomfortable because I'm asking you guys to do something quite complex here, but we're just building the foundation for something a lot more complex later on. So in any case, I'm going to go get some lunch, and this has been a fun stream. I appreciate you guys, and hope you enjoy the picture of my dog in the thumbnail.